Hi everyone, welcome to a live chat from OrcaLab.
We're going to be talking to you for the next hour and trying to answer some of your questions. And please stick around because at the end there's going to be a special video showing clips from what's been happening over the last month or so.
So, let's start.
Yes, we're ready. Okay, well, the first question is, have there been other years when Gclan orcas have been so resident? And as many of you might know that already, that in the Northern Resident community of orcas, the orcas that we study here at OrcaLab, there are 3 clans, A, G, and R. And to understand this community, it's about 300 plus orcas organized into about 40 plus, give or take, matriline's. And they all have a sense of belonging to this community. So in this area, we're very often treated to the presence of the A clan whales, especially the A1s, the A4s, and the 5s. But they get visitors. And over the last several years, the I-15s, who belong to Gclan, have come in and have spent a good portion of their summer here. So the answer is yes, Gclan whales have come into this area, and they're just part of the scene that we have each summer.
Seems like an extended visit this year, I have to say.
Yeah, they were here from starting from July 28th to the present right now. So quite a long visit. Well, here's a good one for Paul to answer. What is OrcaLab, and when was it started?
Okay, well, briefly, OrcaLab is a land-based whale research station on Hansen Island in the Johnston Strait area of northern Vancouver Island, Canada. We began in 1970 as a summer campsite, really, and over the years have developed it into a year-round facility which monitors not just orcas, but mostly orcas on a year-round 24/7 basis. And our work is based on an attitude, a philosophy really, of learning about the whales without interfering with their lives. That's why we've developed remote systems like the hydrophones we listen to and the cameras that we partner with Explore in order to be able to monitor visually as well as acoustically what the whales are doing. I'm very grateful, I have to say, to Explore for allowing this aspect of our work to develop.
Do you want to talk about how you got started and when?
1970, actually, my family and I came to Alert Bay just before Christmas in 1969 and asked local First Nations people and fisherfolk where one might set up a camp on the shore to watch orcas. And the reason we came to Alert Bay was because it had the name of Home of the Killer Whale. So we were given some advice, shown some places on a chart where one might set up to observe the whales. And we came to Hansen Island, which is one of those places, and it just seemed ideal. There was a high cliff next door where one could look out over the adjacent pass. There was a shelf where one could put a hydrophone in the water for listening. And there was a wonderful, deep, ancient forest behind, which included a very, very old red cedar tree. Ultimately, we came to call her Grandmother Cedar, because she, at this point, is well over 1,000 years and possibly 2,000 years old. So it just seemed like an ideal place. There was fresh water too. A little tinkling stream came down to the beach. So we camped there that first year, and we kept coming back year after year in a camp, and gradually we built some buildings that we slept in and sheltered from the rain and so forth. And over the years, we built more and we developed more and we managed to do more.
And last year was our 50th anniversary of being here.
Yeah.
What makes this area so special to the northern residents?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, actually, because this area does seem like a place that Northern Resident Orcas have been coming to for a very long time, quite possibly thousands of years. And I think there are several possible explanations. One is that it's a great place to find food. It's on the inside passage is one of the main waterways which salmon use to get down to the rivers, like the Fraser River. Salmon are the primary food of resident orcas. And within the salmon species, there are a couple of them that are especially important. One is Chinook or spring or king salmon, and the other is chum salmon. And these are the primary food sources of resident orcas. So this being a great place to find food was especially attractive. There are a couple of other reasons, I think. One is that it's a great place to find company, socialize, because many different family groups come into the area, so they can easily find company to hang out with and enjoy life with. But there's a third reason, I think, which is especially important, and that is the presence of rubbing beaches, which are these small beaches which have smooth pebbles in them that the orcas like to rub their bodies in. And if you've been watching, you'll have seen, I think, scenes from some of these rubbing beaches on the live stream. But so together, I think all of these three things add up to this being a great place for northern resident orcas to visit. And they've been doing it for a long time, literally thousands of years. I kind of date their presence in these waters back to the end of the last ice age, maybe 10 or 12,000 years ago, when rivers started to form and salmon started to use those rivers to spawn and return. That, I believe, is a long enough period of time for us to catch a glimpse of here these days.
Well, I like this next question because it disappeared. But the question's okay. I saw it. Do orcas sneeze? Because the person asking the question actually thought they heard an orca sneeze the other day. And orcas are air breathing, and they are subject to a lot of respiratory things that are similar to humans. So not impossible to imagine that they come up and have a moment and let out some air, and it can sound like a sneeze. Would you think that's fair?
Yeah, I'd say that. You certainly hear very loud, almost explosive breaths from the whales. And for example, when they're rubbing, they let out a stream of bubbles as they reduce the buoyancy in their bodies, so they can sink to the bottom to rub. So I'm going with the idea you might have heard a sneeze.
Well, and people have experienced orcas where they have sort of a whistly kind of breath, or something is going on. I-76, who is here at the moment, a couple of years ago, his breathing seemed to be quite whistly, and who knows what was going on there with his lungs or whatever. But nobody's talked about it this year, so maybe whatever issue that was has resolved itself. There was a question about what people heard on the voice notes that we make on the beginning of each recording session, where somebody has asked, well, what does it mean when we say CP is in the center at a gain of 6? So do you want to explain the mixer to people?
Yes, sure. We have quite a number of hydrophones, and we abbreviate them in our note-taking at the beginning of a recording. And by the way, we make a recording every time we hear orcas calling, and we do it 24 hours a day and around the year. It's a lot of recordings, I have to say. But we have a mixer, in which we listen to everything, and when we're just monitoring, all of the stations are in the center, and what we're listening to basically is left, right, and center inputs into the mixer. And when we hear a call, we put that station into the center of the recording, and then we pan the others left and right so that we can monitor the recording as it continues. The abbreviation. I'll just go through the abbreviations. We have a station on Flower Island, and its abbreviation is FI. We have a station on Parson Island. The abbreviation is PI. We have a station at Craycroft Point, and that's the one referred to here. That abbreviation is CP. And then there's a hydrophone at a rubbing beach called Kaizumi. That abbreviation is KRB. There's a hydrophone at the east end of Robson Bight, which is an ecological reserve. And we call that critical point. Its abbreviation is CRPT, because it's traditionally, if the whales go into the reserve and they pass critical point, means that they're on their way to the rubbing beaches. So it's a critical point for them, I guess. Then we have a hydrophone at the main rubbing beach, we call it MRB. Another one at the Strider rubbing beach, we call SRB. So in our note-taking, we often make abbreviations like that. So we'll say CP in the center. Means that the whales we're listening to are within the vicinity of the entrance of Blackney Pass or out in Johnson Strait off Craycroft Point.
So here's a map of the area that we cover with the hydrophones. And of course Johnson Strait is down here. Blackfish Sound is here. OrcaLab is here. And Blackney Pass is here. And the station referred to in the question is Craycroft Point, which is right here. So if whales were vocal and we thought they were loud enough on Craycroft Point, we would put Craycroft Point into the center of the recording. So we'd be listening to it on both channels, but we would pan the other stations either left or right. And this is what gives us the ability to track the whales when they're out of sight of us or at night. So if we have Craycroft in the center, we'd probably put the other stations into the right and the ones up here into the left. And if we heard any shift in the calls, if they got louder down here on Kazumi, then we would know that they were headed in the direction of Kazumi, and then later down to critical, and then down to the beaches, and so forth. And the reverse works the same way. So it's our tool in order to track the whales. And because we're working through the night, because whales don't sleep or are always active, then we're always trying to figure out their movement. This is, we were just having a long discussion last night about this next question. And is it, do we know why orcas rub?
Well, there are various theories, I have to say. One of them is that they're scratching their bodies in order to remove parasites or other annoyances. I'm not, I have to say, too fond of that one. But I personally think it's because they enjoy it. I think I've long regarded the rubbing beaches as kind of massage parlors for orcas. I think they come in and they rub their bodies because it's enjoyable to them. And they have fun. You know, we listen to the kinds of calls that the whales make at the rubbing beaches, and there are lots of, you know, very ordinary calls, of course, but there are lots of really unusual calls mixed in there as well. And to me, it's just part of the enjoyment of life.
And this year, because we have hydrophones at the 3 rubbing beaches in Johnson Strait, this is the first year that we've had a hydrophone at all 3, and we're getting a much better sense of just how much of the day these orcas are rubbing. It seems like when they come into the strait, they make a destination for one rubbing beach, and then the next, and then the next, and so for us, it's been an exciting year to have hydrophones at each location.
Absolutely.
And of course, the cameras at the rubbing beaches really embellish our understanding of what is going on during the day. But they rub at night as well, so it's, you know, all times of the day.
I think there was an hour-long rub at Strider last night, wasn't there?
I think so,
yeah.
And it was groups converging on coming together, and they chose Strider as the spot to do that on. Okay, how can you tell different calls apart? Well, that's a good question. Fortunately, in the 1980s, Dr. John Ford took it upon himself to figure out what was happening with orca acoustics. And his discovery in doing so was that orcas here have dialects. They have different, each family makes a different set of calls. Some of those families can share the same type of call, but it is possible to tell the different groups apart by the way they make the calls or the choices of calls that they decide to use. So that's what we work on, basically. And over the years, because of our experience having exposure to the different groups, some of the groups we have become more and more familiar with, and so that we can understand each family unit of those that come in frequently, we can understand what their calls sound like. So you have a group of whales, like the A5s, who have 3 matrolines, 3 mum groups within that larger group, and they all share the same acoustic heritage, but with each different matroline, within each different family unit, there's enough differences that we can figure out which group is around. Is that?
Yeah, no, it's extremely helpful, especially at night, I think, when we can't see the whales and we can't identify them by the way that they look, or use the photo ID catalog that we rely on. So we rely on sound, and it's incredibly beneficial to have the work that Dr. Ford did and for his PhD thesis in the late 70s as the background. And since then, I think particularly Helena has developed the ability to identify many, if not most, of the individual matrolines, the individual family groups. So when we're listening at night, we understand a lot about who's there. And then, because of our hydrophone network, we can track them, and we can understand a lot about what they're doing. Acoustics is really quite a fantastic tool.
Okay, can you bear with us? We've got some audio issues that we're trying to work out, and we're going to take a small pause. That's actually a good thing to understand, that OrcaLab is in a very remote location, and it takes a lot to put together the cameras that you see and the hydrophones that you're listening to. And here's a case in point, this presentation. So hopefully we are also there have been a lot of questions coming in, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. We had the idea that maybe we would continue just filming this and then send it to Explore, and then you can watch it a bit later. So anyway, one of the questions that came in was about A61. And people had noticed that the top of his dorsal fin is quite curled. And is this something to be concerned about? Well, he's had that look for quite a while now, and he seems fairly robust. He is getting on in age. He's in his 20s. He's fully grown, and I think he's just going to have to live with the fact that his dorsal fin has got that curved tip. Certainly makes it easy to identify him, which we appreciate. The question is, Susie was just feeding it to me, and it's about feeding. Do the northern residents eat Chinook just like the southern residents do? I think Paul mentioned that the resident orcas will prefer either Chinook salmon, which is also called spring salmon or king salmon, and they, in the fall or a little later in the summer, they turn their attention to the runs of chum salmon that are coming through. And that's the same for the northern residents and the southern residents. A typical day at OrcaLab, busy. is we have a lot of volunteers here who are helping us keep track of things 24/7. So the day really is about the 24-hour period. We're running through the night and into the day. And during the day, we are monitoring Black Knee Pass visually, and we're gathering information from wherever we can. And we're always, always listening to the whales, tracking the whales, trying to figure out where they're moving to and where they're going and who they are associating with. And this keeps us going throughout the day. And in between all of that, there are humpbacks out here in Black Knee Pass that we're trying to keep apprised of as well. Anything else can you think of?
No, just to say that it's a very busy 24-hour day, and it really begins, for many people, at daylight. And as the days get shorter and shorter, there's more and more compression of the time that we have actually watching the whales visually. But hearing them, listening to them acoustically never stops.
Do northern residents ever interact with humpbacks?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yes. The short answer is yes. Most of the time, they're just basically going about their own business. But every so often, they will pass each other, and a humpback will harumph, and so show some indication that the orcas are close by. But so really, basically, there isn't really any social interaction that we know of between the two different species.
It's not quite the case with sea lions, which often seem to use humpbacks as toys. You sometimes see them crowding around a humpback, leaping over them and under them, and just generally, I would say, bothering them probably would be an appropriate word. Humpbacks really don't like that kind of activity around them, I don't think.
Where do northern residents spend the winter?
That's the $1,000,000 question. Everyone is curious about that because in the late fall, the northern residents will disappear from here, and they will go back north. And the coast is big, and it's a large area, and it's very sparsely populated. So the chances of seeing orcas when they're off for the winter is less, and so we don't really have a lot of understanding about where they are specifically, but we do feel that they go up north and that they probably have winter areas that they like to go to.
Their range should include southeast Alaska.
Right.
So we think that they spend time both in northern BC waters and in southeast Alaskan waters. And we get occasional reports of them from those areas that tell us that they're there. But also, I think we could imagine that the whales are probably in smaller groups in the winter time. Not so many families probably get together in the same places. So their habits are more spread out, I think, in the winter, which makes it harder to really understand exactly what they're doing.
Do you ever see or hear southern residents at OrcaLab?
Yes, is the answer to the question, do we ever see southern residents here at OrcaLab? Yes, we do. Every spring for the last several years, southern residents have made a tour around from the west coast of Vancouver Island and have dropped down through here. So we have experienced all three pods from the southern residents, J, Ks, and Ls. And they basically are usually just transiting through. They don't stay, and they're on their way back to the San Juan area.
Do certain calls relate to certain behaviors, like when foraging or rubbing?
Well, at night, I should repeat the question. Do certain calls relate to behavior? And the short answer is yes.
Yes, and when we know a certain amount, for example, if we hear trains of echolocation clicks, it's very likely that the whales are chasing a salmon. If we hear certain low energy calls like it probably means that they're relaxing. If they're excited, we hear excited kinds of calls from them. So we know some things, but we certainly don't know by any means everything.
Yeah, we can do broad understandings of foraging, traveling, socializing, and resting.
Yeah.
So the question again was, what is tail slapping, and whether or not they're using that to stun their prey. I would say probably not for stunning their prey. The whales come up and they tail slap. Either it may indicate sort of an excitement within themselves that they are traveling fast or wanting to signal to another orca perhaps, or express annoyance.
Yeah.
Sometimes boats get too close, and at those times you'll see a lot of tail slapping, and it's really a indication of like, back off. We're here. You're there. We don't like you being here.
It's a very. Why do male orcas have a shorter lifespan? It's a very good question. I think actually it may come down to the life of a male orca being more stressful than the life of a female orca. A female grows up, she has her kids and has her own immediate family needs and so forth. Males are more separate, and I do think that their life may in many ways be more difficult than life for a female orca. What do you think?
Well, I think the female orca has a big job to do. She has to keep going. She's got offspring to raise and bring to maturity, and that involves a lot of attention. The male orcas, the average lifespan is about 29 years, which doesn't seem like a lot, and for a female, the average lifespan is 50 years. So there is a disparity there, and I don't think everybody quite understands it.
No, we don't really understand it, which is why I speculate about stress.
That's because you're male.
Exactly.
We should be back to the iPad.
Okay.
Any behavioral changes with the Northern residents since the absence of cruise ships last year?
Well,
to be truthful, I don't see many real changes in the behavior of the whales, but I will tell you one thing, and that is that it's a lot more pleasant here in the lab listening to the earphones,
Yes.
because we're listening all the time. And cruise ships are incredibly loud and annoying when they pass through. I'm not looking forward to their return, to be truthful.
Do you have a favorite maitre line, both of you?
well, I can answer that. We just recently had the A30s come back. And it's not hard to appreciate the A30s. In normal years, over the decades, they are the group that is here the most frequently for July and August. And it's not hard to extend yourself into feeling something for them because, we really watched them over the years as a family. Whales have matured and babies have been born and members have died, and you feel a certain involvement with those groups. So for me, the A30s. How about you?
Yeah, I have to say, certainly Nicola, who was what's her relation to 30 right now? The great grandmother.
Nicola was, A30's mother.
A30's mother, and 30 was...
You're getting too involved, but I think...
anyway, going way back to the beginning of being here, one of the most easily identifiable whales and classiest whales in terms of just the shape of her dorsal fin was a female named Nicola. And she had a beautiful dorsal fin that had a big notch out of the top of it, which gave it her name. And she was very, very familiar all those years until she ultimately died. But her kids are now many of the favorites of not just us, but many people here.
Yeah, don't forget, we've been here 50 years. And it's 50 years of watching these whales come and go. The designation of the label Northern Resident, and you've heard about Southern Residents, it describes the two communities of resident fish-eating orcas on this coast. So they have a similar social structure. They have similar food preferences. They prefer different locations. And the two communities, although they have all of that in common, actually don't have anything to do with each other. So they're disparate communities, but they are basically very similar.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, this one's for you. Where is the new underwater camera going?
Oh, I see. Well, we for many years, I'm sure you know, we've had an underwater camera at the main rubbing beach, which has produced some spectacular imagery, I have to say. More recently, thanks to Explorer, I have to say, we have a great underwater camera at the Strider rubbing beach, which is and I'm sure many of you know, has produced incredible images of the whales rubbing or passing by underwater. But there's a third rubbing beach. It's called Kaizumi. The reason it's called Kaizumi is it lies partway between a beach called Kaikash Beach and a rock called Izumi Rock. So it gets its name Kaizumi. And we have a surface camera there, and we are also getting ready to put an underwater camera there, because we think the behavior of the whales is predictable enough that we can install a camera that will catch them underwater. We haven't done it yet, but we're looking forward to it.
To end, is there anything we can do as viewers to help you out? Well, I would say keep watching.
Yeah,
Keep listening. That's the best thing. It's so great to have the audience that we have, and we're really appreciative of the intense interest that we sense from all of you about these very special whales and this area and OrcaLab. So thank you very, very much.
And you can encourage Explore to keep on doing it.
Yeah, there you go.
We are very grateful to Explore, I have to say, and I'm sure many of you who support us with little donations or big ones and so forth. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. So now that this portion of this question and answer has come to an end, stay tuned. We're going to show you some of the highlights from the summer, and hope you enjoy it. And to everyone out there, stay safe.
Yeah.
And keep watching.
Yes, take care.